If you just joined us, a happy Independence Day to you. 68 years. If you were, well, Ghana, where would you hope to be? Where we are now? I don't know. When you look at the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, it talks about the aspirations of the people. Is this where we would have aspired to be at? So we're going to do something today. We want to hear from you, and we'll put out some Zoom details in the course of the show, maybe in the course of the news review or later, where you can connect with us on the show, not immediately, but share your thoughts, your reflections on Ghana, where we've been, where we are, and maybe where you hope we shall be. But for now, let me find out from those in the studio where they think Ghana is, what they think about the Independence Day celebrations as we are doing it today at the seat of the presidency, and what the way forward is for Ghana. Joining the conversation, we have James Kofi Annan, human rights and environmental advocate. He's also a stalwart in Efutu. We also have Amanda Akwoko Clinton. I always butcher this. Head of Chambers Clinton Consultancy. They both join the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Did I get close to it today, or I'm still like 50%?
Perfect pronunciation.
Okay, thank you. I hope I'm able to maintain it. So here we are. I'm going to quickly give you a few minutes to reflect, maximum 2 minutes. I'll start with you, Amanda.
Okay, well, off the back of what you've just been discussing before we came on, or before both of us came on air, about, the least and most efficient government and, this oral policy for recovery. And I think President Mahama was talking about, Agenda 111, and yet not a single hospital has been built. I thought off the back of that, we could talk about Independence Day and how Ghana gained independence roughly around the same time as Singapore. And perhaps what can be learnt from that, just because I did African politics as well. I just think that, this government is obviously trying to start well with a leaner and more efficient government. But, we really do have to prioritize national interest over party politics for a start. And, we're obviously trying to implement a strict anti-corruption policy like Singapore did. In terms of, I think President Mahama said that his appointees will be held to a higher account this time round. And like Singapore, which is, I think, has the most millionaires in Asia and, one of the most innovative countries in the world, we have to have an emphasis on more competence, more competent people managing state affairs. So if people don't turn out to be what President Mahama thought, perhaps a reshuffle would be a good idea in time. And just to turn Ghana into a world trade hub like Singapore, a port with logistics, shipping, and etc., as well as to diversify economies such as finance, tech, biotech, focus on these things, and just a world-class education system such as practical, technical, and innovative education. And this time round, perhaps solving the housing crisis and focusing on merit, for instance, performance, not political affiliation. So, just because it's Independence Day, those are the things I'm thinking about. The comparison between Singapore gaining independence a few years after Ghana, and yet they have, they're very innovative, they're the richest country in Asia, and, they have the world's highest, millionaires per capita sort of thing. And so Ghana definitely can aspire to these people, aspire to this country for me.
It's interesting you bring up Singapore.
Yeah.
I've stopped flogging that horse. But you just reminded me of something I wanted to do in my blunt thoughts some time back. So I pulled up the data.
Yeah.
It's the world's best city for business, if you like.
Yes.
You can look at New York
and
juxtapose that, because New York has a crazy list of, business people and all that. But Singapore, at the last count, had 244,000 millionaires. And 30 billionaires.
Yes.
Do you know what this does to an economy?
It brings in more money, more people can be employed.
All of these millionaires, especially if they are localized, will be creating jobs.
Yes, exactly.
There'll be spin-offs from these jobs.
Exactly.
The 30 billionaires, same. And I think when I did the calculation at the time, it was about, was it 4.1% of them being millionaires? If you put the
per
population.
Capita,
together, about 4.9% of them being millionaires, I think, per the count. And that is crazy. In Africa, South Africa has the edge. I've forgotten whether it's Pretoria or Joburg, but I have to, get it. But obviously, there's a lot we could catch up on in terms
There's
of
a lot we can catch
our
up on.
contemporaries back then who are now
Yeah.
legions ahead of us.
Yes, and to also, I mean, I'd really like to highlight the fact that the oral policy, Operation Recover All Loot, is a great policy because I definitely think they need the money in the coffers. That's why they're doing this. However, you know, true innovation means getting more money in.
Right.
You can't have an entire campaign just recovering the loot because if the next government comes in 8 years' time, they're just going to do the same thing. So the emphasis should be 92% of absolute innovation to get more money for this country. And whilst you're doing that, debt recovery, you know what I mean? That's what we do in debt recovery. We focus sometimes on the debt, but mostly on getting more money in, basically.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let me come to you, James Kofi Annan. Quick thoughts on any of these matters? Any reflections you have?
Yes. I'll come back to Amanda's reflection later, but let me say this. I would like to start from our national anthem, which we have sung as a routine. God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation great and strong, bold to defend forever the cause of freedom and of rights. Fill our hearts with true humility. And my emphasis is one of these things. Fill our hearts with true humility. Make us cherish fearless honesty. That's the second emphasis. And help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore. Usually, I would say that we sing these things without reflecting on what they mean to us as, as a people. And I would say that for the first 2 or 3 stanzas and the last stanzas of our national anthem, I think we've done well. We have a democracy that seems to be working. Of course, once it's not broken and we are having elections and changing government, it means that it seems to be working. And we are people who seem to be enforcing our right. Not quite long ago, we had an issue with Ivory Coast, boundary issues.
Right.
We were able to win it.
Maritime
issues. And so we say that we are actually enforcing our rights in this way. But what we are not reflecting on are the issues of fearless honesty. And, we filling the nation's, filling our heart with the nation's interests. These are the things that we are not reflecting on, and it's something that breaks my heart. We're just talking about, having millionaires in Malaysia and America and so on and so forth. Look, for me, it is not just the counting of how many millionaires we have. It is also how the millionaires made their money. You get it? So when you come to Africa...
So when we talk about it this way, just before you go on, we are talking about the positive context where you have the enabling environment that allows anybody who wants to go into certain sectors of the economy, industry and all that, to be able to go there. It's viable, and then you can get the sum of money. Yesterday, I recall someone called into the program and said, look, agric is big business. Agric is big business.
Yes.
If I had certain quantums of money, one of the first things I would go into is agric. Because I've worked, I always say, the cashew sector. I know everything in that value chain. If I had some chunks of money, I would farm cashew, cassava, and the rest. But like the gentleman pointed out, where is the capital to go intensive and do? You don't want to go and do a hoe and cutlass agric. You want to do mechanized agriculture. So that's what I believe we are.
Yes. But you see, we are celebrating 68 years of nationhood. And so that's where the context from which I am coming from. We can go into viable businesses, when we are done with our independence celebration. But I am looking at how did other people get to where they are? If you look at Africa in general, you see that there are so many we have some millionaires, I would say, like even the numbers, if we have 10 millionaires. But we have so many poor people. The gap between those who are very poor and those who are so rich is so huge. Whereas
and getting worse.
And getting worse.
Yes.
Whereas in other countries, you have a chunk of middlemen, or I would say middle income persons, who fill the gap between those who are poor and those who are rich. And it is because, do you know how we get our contracts? How those people who are very, very rich become rich in Africa? These contracts will be given to a person A or a person B, and that's it. It doesn't matter whether the person has a know-how, has the skills or not. We are here talking about value for money. So all of us are chasing after the end, being millionaires, but we are not thinking about how the value for money box is ticked for our country.
Yes, but I think the point I was actually trying to make is to take some pressure off government, because as someone in private practice and as someone who is an entrepreneur, I built my own website when I moved back to Ghana a number of years ago with very little money. And, you know, I literally wrote everything on the website. I was an entrepreneur. I started from wherever I started from and built a brand. That is the spirit of entrepreneurship, in terms of to give this to Ghanaians, that government doesn't owe you anything. Most likely government will not do anything for you. If you sit around waiting for government to give you a contract or something else, you might be sitting there quite a long time. So to put this, it's a spirit of innovation and opportunity and possible funding sources, etc. So because we're not talking about just being a millionaire, you know, we're talking about giving people the entrepreneurship skill set, so anywhere in the economy they can rise up, and then it puts less pressure on government. They become self-sufficient, and not only self-sufficient, but they thrive. So I think that was more the emphasis on national interest that I was talking about,
yes,
as opposed to just relying on, and the other thing billionaires do create is they create a lot of jobs, etc.
They do.
But the entrepreneurial spirit is something that has to be developed further in Ghanaians, because government will not, and that's any party, will not save you. So you might as well just save yourself.
Amanda, you are right. See,
so James,
the spirit,
let's
so the spirit of
through.
entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur myself.
Yeah.
The spirit of entrepreneurship is perfect. But you see, I am also coming from a different angle. The angle that go to school, get education, have skills, have knowledge, start business, work your way up the ladder, make sure that you merit whatever business enterprises that you have, whatever income that you earn, make sure that you merit it. But 60 years on, I don't think that Ghana has done well with that. I think that we have deteriorated in terms of merit-based achievement. We only tick the box at a certain point. People like you, I'm sure if we give you the chance, you talk about the frustrations that you have to go through in living your dream, in being meritorious in what you do. You get it? There's so many frustrations. And the frustrations are coming from greed, selfishness, etc. People who want to get rich quick, from nowhere to everything. They are the ones who are frustrating the system, who are making the genuine ones, those who have the skills and have the mindset, getting frustrated. And if you don't take care,
yes, but
your bag and go.
Entrepreneurship for me is a bug. Like, I mean, the first time I got the entrepreneurship bug was when I lived in America for a few years, and I saw how it could be like a one-man shop, and they had this like big website, and they had these channels of people communicating with them, and they would get themselves out there, get themselves out there, get themselves out there. No matter how small they were, they thought big, and they were big until they became big. I mean, before that, I did a lot of academia, you know, a lot, etc. But I never saw the connect between how to use my academic skill and entrepreneurship until I saw it in action, where anybody could just go out there and do something and try and build a presence. And so that is what I'm saying, that in Ghana, government cannot give you that, but they can give you a sense of how to build it for yourself, create an environment where you build your own websites, you do your own thing, you see a gap, you see that, foreigners are coming more. What can I do to service them? Who has the money? How can I do this? And not to rely on some big something coming to save you, but to save yourself. I mean,
Okay,
that
so
for me is the point.
Let's move the conversation forward. The quick bits I will say, you were talking about the lack of this. It's because patriotism is on its last limb in Ghana. It's practically dead.
Yeah.
You speak to young people and you realize that there's practically no patriotism. It's everybody for himself, God for us all. And if we want to blame, I think one of the crucial sectors the people would blame are politicians, especially those who have had the opportunity of being in government, because that is where you would see that the ordinary man, we get calls all the time, people call in and say, in fact, someone called yesterday and said, Oral and the rest must really reap its fruit and all of that, because if not, they too can come and do some of the things that politicians are doing. Yeah. You get it? It means, just give me a second. I mean, I'm not lampooning for nothing.
No, I know.
You, like you said, you can look at someone who, there are people who graduated with us. Yes, it's quite a while ago. And you look at what you have done with yourself in life, legitimately, and people who had basically nothing. And now they have practically everything. You know, what it would take you 50 years to do, they can use 2 years, 3 years in government to do.
But not all money is good money.
And that tells you of the disconnect. That was why we were also talking about the yawning gap and continuously yawning gap between the haves and the have-nots. And it's stark. And I've said before this quote, that there is that quote that someday the poor will have nothing else to eat but the rich. It's a time bomb for every country. Every country has its own dynamics. US, 3% thereabouts, owning about, 30, 40% of the economy, yes. But look at the spin-offs and the jobs and what they create versus here. It's in the person's pocket. In fact, the person earned it illegitimately. So he or she can't even expose it. So now you have a lot of, go to Osu, go to Labone, go to Roman Ridge, go to cantonments. You are seeing a lot of buildings coming up, and a lot of them, you know what's happening? Money laundering. They have to whitewash the black money.
Yeah.
It is fact. Then you talk about a meritorious system. It used to be. It no longer is. It means nothing. I went to school, graduated with a 3.9 GPA out of 4.0. Yeah, what does it mean? You have to show something beyond that. In other times, that itself would have been a scholarship heading out of the country or something, doing this, doing that. Today, we know of people who have wanted scholarships, genuinely poor, needy. They are not getting it. The rich are rather getting the scholarships. You acquire the skills and everything. Do you know how many people I know with master's degrees who are doing Uber, Yango, and the rest? They can't find anything. That is underemployment, not even unemployment, because the skill set they have versus what they are doing are not commensurable. We have all of this in the system. And finally, government really, anywhere you find an economy that is working, government shouldn't be in the business of doing business. Government shouldn't be in the business of doing business. Government, you create the environment and let entrepreneurs, private enterprise, drive it. There are sectors where government will have to do some business, but by and large, and that is all.
Exactly.
We know this, but for some reason, it always becomes a problem. Then, final words, let's do a minute and then we'll get to my joy on the road.
Okay. So final words, let me just add to what you said, that you see, sometimes you have the certificate, you have masters, you have all of that. But the question is whether that certificate, the weight of that certificate is enough to make you what you want to become. For me, I'll always go back to 68 years. 68 years, I think that we have to check our attitude, mindset towards everything, mindset towards business, mindset towards public life, mindset towards education. How do we achieve education that is not just getting an A in class, rather than getting a content and being skillful at what you do? Somebody has gone to school to learn carpentry. He comes out of school and is not able to create a chair. Then what did you go to school to do? So we have to change our mindset about everything. About 2 or 3 years ago, we were in this country when government bought past questions for WASI student, right? And I was like, no, you know, you are rather trying to focus on the student person rather than looking at the content of what the student went to school to do. So you are creating a mindset that, oh, all what it matters is that you should pass. But how did you pass? If you pass and then you are put in your seat, your seat here as a host of this program, and you cannot manage this small portion, even though you can show that you were first class in journalism, you had first class in hosting of shows, and you cannot host a simple show like this, then what becomes of your education? So the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, get what you want to get, but make sure that it is merit-based. It is something that you merited. You acquired the skills, and therefore you were given what you merited to be given. That's the point I'm trying to make. 60 years, 68 years.
Okay, so let's get into the other stories. Let's start with myjoyonline.com. Of course, today being a holiday, Independence Day, you would expect that the newspapers would take a breather, so we're on a diet. But sad story. 1 dead, scores injured. That's the main story on myjoyonline.com. 1 dead, scores injured as deadly explosions rock mining shops in Odumasi. And according to the story, a powerful explosion at shops dealing in mining explosives at Odumasi near Konongo in the Asante Achim Central Municipality of the Ashanti region has left 1 person dead and several others injured, including 2 firefighters. The fire, which broke out in stores selling dynamite and other explosives used by local miners, triggered earth-shaking blasts that damaged buildings and left dozens injured. Victims have been rushed to nearby hospitals for treatment. The explosion and subsequent inferno occurred about 50 meters away from a fuel station. I'll just hang it there. There's the Apiate incident, you remember?
Yes.
We've had some of these, of course, that also had to do with mining, explosives, and other things. We've had the blast around Atomic, if you remember, the gas-related ones. We had the one close by sometime in June, how many years ago? Was it 2019? And all these things that have happened. I simply think part of our problem is systems for quality control and checks in certain areas. Here we are again, another such explosion, people severely injured and dying. I mean, and then we have constant market fires. You can, if I were a betting man, and if you could bet on that,
you win a lot.
Every year, I would win at least 3 markets in Ghana. What am I saying? Even 10.
Yeah,
we'll catch fire before. I'm not wishing evil, but it's a trend.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Well, it's something government would have to get involved in terms of, you know, quality checks and assurances, particularly in specific types of industries. For instance, in markets, in places where high explosives can potentially happen, and to just, you know, show some level of doing it before it happens and some sort of sensitization. It's because this is loss of life, loss of, you know, a building, and it's something that can be addressed, because it's not always after the fact that, you know, fire people should come, but there should be some sense of quality control across board beforehand.
Right. Yeah, you see, there is the EPA law that regulates how we handle some of these dangerous chemicals and explosives. And the law defines how far away some of these filling stations or whatever that we do must be done.
They must be removed from certain...
Exactly. And even the handling of those explosives, how they must be handled, who must handle it, who qualifies to handle these things. But once you repudiate the law, you put the law aside and do what you want, then you are going to have some of these problems. Apiety happened. It is not like other places accidents don't happen. Even in America, you remember the Exxon,
I do.
You know,
the spillage.
Yes. But how we handle some of these things after they have happened. Apiety, there was an explosion. The reason a lot of people died was because they were going to do what? Siphon fuel.
Yeah.
You get it? Now, with this story that you are reading, you can see that explosives have been hidden or kept in people's homes. As per the law, these explosives must not find themselves in people's homes.
There must be warehouses and all.
They must be in warehouses at certain locations far away from people's living spaces. So the fact that these things are being found in people's homes, you know the intention, the intention of the use of those explosives. It is these same illegal miners. I know I don't have evidence to show that they are illegal miners, but if they are found in people's homes and they are explosive for mining, then you can also conclude that it is likely they are going to be used for some illegal purposes.
And this could even be a security threat.
It could be a security
Because
threat.
apart from the illegality of what they engage in Galamsey, it could also be converted into other uses that you and I are aware of, which is a security concern.
Yeah, so it then comes back to the same thing. What were people looking for, or what are people looking for? They are looking for money. How do we get money? We get money by being employed. We get money by being an entrepreneur. We get money by being business persons.
Yes, but I think training above everything else in terms of sometimes, even though people say, training, does it really work? It does. When you keep on harping onto people, this is the standard, this is what happens if you don't keep it, and, this is what we expect of you, just constant training on very sensitive things like this is needed, and I do think it's going to make a massive difference. And even within markets and different things like that, training on, certain things will reap particular benefits.
I agree with you, but you see, my sister, we are in Ghana, and the ideal is not always the case. You go there and set up training. Those who are likely to come for the training are not the ones who may even need it. Or those who need the training may not even come.
Yes, but the thing is, it should be mandatory. Do you see what I mean? It should be absolutely mandatory for this level of industry, and your employer tells you you have to go to
it is mandatory
Yeah.
that when you are going to mine, you have to go for a license. The law says that you should have a license before you mine. That's mandatory. The law says that before you even go for license, you have to do environmental scoping assessment to come out with a report said that your mining will not hurt human beings or other people living in vicinity. So these are all the rules. Ideally, we shouldn't have a problem with explosion of this nature. Ideally, we should not have the desecration of our environment, etc., etc. But we are in Ghana.
Yes, but we must aspire. Just because we're in Ghana, we're in Ghana and yet we're all here.
That is the reason why
we should aspire.
That is the reason why the psalmist said. That's the reason why the psalmist said, "Fill our hearts with true humility, make us cherish fearless honesty." So if
patriotism, perhaps.
Exactly. Yes. You see. We must aspire to do the right thing. I went to school at the age of 13 years. You know my story. And went through rigorous, when I was in the University of Ghana, I didn't have anyone to buy me books, but I was buying books on the floor. If you go to Bush Canteen, there was somebody who was selling used books, first book we call it. And I would buy books on any subject, regardless of the subject I was reading, just because I wanted to acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
I was a writer, I was everything, because I wanted to do things with my hand, my knowledge. I want to create. I'm an entrepreneur. But I got second class lower upon all the readings that I got. Some people quickly got first class.
Where are they now?
Where are they now? If you I know a mate of mine, since we finished school, he tried everything to get a job. He didn't get. If you put the two of us, he got first class, I got second lower. If you put the two of us to write 3 pages, I can finish my 3 pages within less than 3 hours.
Yes.
Of an article. If you ask him to write even a letter, it will be a problem. And it's, I'm not mentioning name, and it is not only my time, even now it's worse. Choose 100 graduates.
But you know what you're saying is not a general picture.
It's not a general, but choose 100 graduates. And I'm building a point. If you allow me, you understand the point I'm trying to build. Choose 100 graduates. Ask the 100 graduate to write you a letter, a standard letter. And I can guarantee you that less than half of them will be able to write the letter right. The point I'm trying to make is that we are so quick in ticking the box. We must come back and we probably orient ourselves. That look, we can do whatever we want to do. We can be whatever we want to be. Let us all remember why we gained independence. When our president, the one who gained independence for us, when he was declaring the independence, he said, all of us must always be singing this song. I guess what he was trying to say is that let us meditate and reflect on these words and let these words guide us so that if it is education you are looking for, get education and not certificates. The certificate is just a testimony of your education.
I think your point is made. Amanda, you want to come in briefly, so we...
Yes, I mean, I think you're right, but ultimately, you know, especially because, you know, we were looking at what the government was talking about before both of us came on air, it's also about balancing accountability with innovation, you know, moving forward in Ghana. Because, again, you know, I'm going to keep on going on about this Operation Recover or Loot, which is a fantastic policy, but let it not just dominate the national focus so much. I mean, for me, it's about simultaneously launching aggressive income-generating sectors like agriculture, tech hubs, and green energy, and doing things like that, and not just focusing on what we're collecting, but what we can build, ultimately. But I'm a big believer in sensitization and retraining, because sometimes these things work. And the thing you said about first class, I think that cuts across board, because there's an in-house joke as lawyers of anybody who gets a first class in undergrad is actually very unlikely, and professors will tell you this, is actually very unlikely to pass the bar, because in terms of practical application of you've got a client sitting in front of you, how do you solve this, blah, 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 you know, they'll come up with a completely academic assessment which might not enable them to be passed at the bar.
I think the statistics...
So it's across board in terms of...
No, but we need to inspire the young generation.
We have to move...
No, we need to inspire our younger generation to aspire for merit. For me, that is what I believe in. That let them aspire to be meritorious in what they want, rather than just saying that I want it. For what reason?
Right. So merit, yes, it must be merit-based. But I think the best, and you're right, I mean, I think I've seen some projections before from the law school, for example, that show that many of them, even the lecturers, many of them are second upper, second lower, you know, students from back then who are now. So it paints a certain picture. I think where we should be is to create that nexus, synergy, that bridge, so that having a first class means something. Yeah. And it has a ripple effect on what you end up doing. So you can have the Bill Gates and the,
Musk's,
Bill Gates, Zuckerbergs and others who may have done Harvard and all these places, dropped out and still become, it tells you that even going through such a place had a certain impact. Yes. You get it. So it must mean something. It shouldn't be that, I agree. I speak to people sometimes who have first-class degrees, and you ask yourself, okay, so how does this person get to first class? But we should move beyond the paper and let the paper actually mean something in terms of baking the person to be fully baked, not half-baked. But before we go to the next story, I see a comment from Solomon Nyantechi. He comments on our show often. He says, Ben, I vehemently disagree with the claim that the government has no business since it must take charge, lead everything, and then enlist the private sector. If the government should go to sleep so that private individuals can lead, why should we waste time electing people at all? Don't argue this lest Ofosu Dottie, I'm sure you're referring to David, come to your studio because he will floor you. Floor, by the way, is F-L-O-O-R, not F-L-A-W. Now, the point I was making was not, and my guests will bear me witness, I never said that government should never get involved. There are sectors of the economy. That is why you don't have private individuals putting up airstrips or airports often, right? Building roads here and there. That is government business. And in fact, when you go to parliament, that's what they call government business. Hospitals and the rest. You may have private enterprise going into that, but it is largely the bigger, big daddy government that goes into those aspects. But some of the things that government does, especially in our part of the world, is not meant for government to do. It is the private sector as the engine of growth to get in there, and government will only give support. For example, by taming inflation, by ensuring that the exchange rate is viable, by ensuring that businesses can borrow at certain levels so that they are not borrowing at a high rate like they're doing now, 30-something%. How can you churn a profit? How can you turn over a profit? So that's what it means, and that's what I was saying. When we say that government has no business doing business, it doesn't mean government should not be involved at all, but create that environment, and then all things will follow. That's how it works. So this reference to my senior David Ofosu-Dorte, if he were here, I would say the same, just so you know.
Yes, and in terms of government, in terms of not having too much red tape, because that's largely why Trump was brought in, because people thought that, there's too much red tape in order for entrepreneurs to succeed. And so, the Republicans say they're going to answer that by not having too much red tape. And it's an environment. It's a feeling. You know what I mean? You feel it in the air when you go to places that are full of innovation, be it Singapore, be it the US, and different things like that. So I think what both of us were trying to get at is that the government should perhaps showcase examples of where people built their own website, they did their own things, and they made something of themselves, or that they saw that there's an increase in the amount of Black Americans coming in, wanting to get citizenship and wanting to settle here. What can I provide for a service that is not being provided? Do I go to Kukubite? How do I meet these people? How do I, you know what I mean? So it's about thinking outside the box and innovation. That's what we mean. Right. Government cannot do that for you. Right. And you cannot come to this studio and tell us the government will be able to hand you what you need. You can hand yourself what you need, is our point, ultimately.
Right. Let's get into other stories. I'll box in a few of them together. Minorities' motion to probe post-December 7 dismissals blocked, and the minority in Parliament has been blocked from moving a motion seeking a parliamentary probe into the dismissal of workers employed after December the 7th. The motion filed by the minority leader and two other MPP MPs sought to have Parliament declare that the dismissals were unconstitutional. Before the motion could be moved, Majority Leader Mahama Ayariga challenged it, arguing that the matter was already before the courts. First Deputy Speaker Bernard Ahiafo upheld the majority leader's objection and dismissed the motion. And then there are less than 60 political appointees. I'm actually going according to the order on myjoyonline.com. There are less than 60 political appointees at presidency, Kwachi Ofosu says. The Minister of State in charge of Government Communications, Felix Ofosu-Kwachi, has told Parliament that there are currently fewer than 60 presidential staffers working at the presidency, alongside fewer than 60 ministers and deputy ministers. According to him, the president is committed to cutting frivolous expenditure. He insists that the president will uphold his promise to appoint no more than 60 ministers and will not come close to the 337 political appointees under former President Akufo-Addo. There's also program baako, definitions brebree. Oppong Nkrumah mocks 24-hour economy. And former Information Minister Oppong Nkrumah has criticized the government over what he describes as its failure to clearly define and explain key economic policies, particularly the much-touted 24-hour economy. Speaking on the floor of Parliament on Wednesday, March 4, Oppong Nkrumah took a swipe at the ambiguity surrounding the 24-hour economy initiative, stating, and I quote him here, "Till date, or to date if you like, we don't have a single definition for the 24-hour economy program. Everybody you talk to has a different definition. One program, many definitions." And as he put it, program baako, definitions brebree. Quick reflections. This time I'll start with you. For the sake of time, let's
yes, you see, well, you know also that I contested, for Efutu for 2020 and 2024. So politically, I am aligned to the NDC, so I need to make that clear here. And to say that I would want to applaud the the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, for that bold sacrifice that he is making to run his government with a very lean size government. You see, I get those who are making those arguments that some positions are equivalent to certain roles. Let's even assume that of the 125 ministers appointed by the previous administration, His Excellency the President decides to reduce it by one. That one in itself is a lot. That one minister, now no more a minister, Ghana will be spared of one police officer who will be following a minister everywhere he goes. Ghana will be spared of probably somebody who would be a gardener in the homes. V8 vehicle, one of them, will be spared. And so
some people will tell you the reverse too is that it would have created jobs for some people.
No. You see, the person say, give me the mandate. When I come, I'll run the government, I'll run my machinery with lean government. You get it? Now, if other people needs to be employed, the private sector can come in and employ those other persons. We just don't have to say that because people need to be employed and therefore we are going to appoint 200 ministers. No, it doesn't work like that. For me, what the president has sought to do is to send a signal, not only within its ministers, but also to all government agencies that, look, we want the cost of running government machinery to be smaller.
Okay, all right.
So that we can free the money for other things.
Okay.
Education is there, health is there, so many other spaces are there. So let me run my government with a small number of
Let me pick the thoughts of Amanda on that.
Well, in terms of some of the headlines you've just read out, I mean, personally, I think each government should choose who they want to employ, and the matter is before the court in terms of, the people who are appointed and, can they just so easily be dismissed? But personally, I think it's about following the mandate that you are under in terms of the government, and so perhaps that is why, some people have been dismissed. Secondly, this issue of the least and most efficient government, and I think the president has said he has less than 60 staffers, etc., which is wonderful, but, it's also about ensuring that they're the most competent people and that they are managing state affairs, and furthermore, that, opportunities are given based on ability and performance, not political affiliation or tribalism, etc. So it's great to have a very lean and efficient structure, but if the numbers are needed in order to carry out the mandate and people are competent and it's not just based on party loyalty, then that's what you should go for. It's not just about numbers, it's about quality and fairness and getting the best people out there.
So it's about being able to do the job, but also ensuring effectiveness and efficiency, so that you have you go to some sectors of our economy, especially the ministries, you may have 5 people doing the work that one person can do. So all those come in there. But tied to that, government size shrinks on paper but grows in reality. That's according to Samuel Jinapor, the former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. I found it interesting. I listened to what he had to say. I want to see the facts of that. But I do recall that in the erstwhile administration, I was shocked because this was a clear vestige, one of the vestiges of colonialism, and I didn't think that title was still. But among the staffers, you would see, you remember there was a time where we were looking at the list of staffers, the hundreds and hundreds of them, if not over 1,000 at a point. And there was even a lady in waiting. You remember?
Yes.
From the colonial period, and ladies in waiting and all that. Okay, well, I guess this is Ghana. Let's create the jobs.
And there's different definition of 24-hour economy. I mean, perhaps it's something that can be...
No, this is not 24 hours.
That can be resolved in terms of maybe 24 hours just
Program
means
baako definition.
running, 24 hours. What is the definition?
The passport office, for instance, has begun 24-hour economy.
Yeah, we heard the sector minister talk about.
We have Ghana Publishing House that's now running 24 hours now. So there's ample.
Is that entirely new though? Because I know the previous management of, in fact, they did quite a good job at Ghana Publishing. I don't know whether we are now starting, but I know there are moves to continue.
No, I used to be a printer. You know, one of my businesses was in printing, and sometimes in Christmas or Easter, you run, shift 24 hours. So
yeah, but we are talking about constantly doing it, not only at Christmas, because
but
then
you are talking about definition. Yes,
somebody is definition.
Yeah, definition. Somebody is accusing the government of not being able to define its own 24-hour economy promise. But what is 24-hour economy?
Tell us your NDC.
It is just basically saying that, look, this business, we want to run it all year round, all day long, night, day. That is all. That is the definition of 24-hour economy. So what the government is trying to do is to create...
it's not even going to be all sectors of the...
It's not going to be all sectors of the economy. Look, what the government is trying to do, let me give you a gist. The government is trying to set the pace so that others will follow. If, for instance, the Ghana Publishing Corporation or company is running 24-hour shift, it means that if you need to do a name change and gazette it, you don't have to rush from work. You know that anytime you go there, there will be people there who would gazette your name for you. So you wait, you finish your work, and then you go there and do it.
Or perhaps going online as well is a way of creating 24 hours. You know what I mean? So you don't have to physically, but maybe going online and making sure that people can respond by the next morning, but you've already filed at nighttime.
Yes. So all that I'm trying to say is that the government would then set the pace. Whether it's online or physical, there will be people to respond to whatever you want. Therefore, Joy FM or Joy TV, if somebody wants to place an advert, you know that because Joy knows that other people are not sleeping at this time, so they are running. So Joy would also respond by running 24 hours. And then the person who is going to place the advert would also come knowing that...
Point made. And we all await how these will fit into the different, cogs in the wheel of our economy. We want to see how it will be actualized. But something that for example, you're a lawyer, you also have, things to deal with every time. Imagine the court system, the backlogs, land issues, and all of that. Imagine over weekends, there were a system, not judges necessarily sitting, but part of the processes could be handled over the weekends, online and all of that, to facilitate matters so that by Monday, some of the things that would have now been having to be dealt with on Monday have already been done over the weekend. You have a shift for more people who have been employed to do that over the weekend. So from Monday, you are 50% ahead in terms of what you would have done. I mean, these are all things that I've not heard anyone talk about this, but I think even in the judicial system, that's an easy way we can ensure that, because if you are clearing cases, it saves the money cost.
Yeah, but
it saves the nation cost.
Adenta Court, for instance, I think have already started introducing a shift-based system where it's the same court, but two judges in terms of one judge is at a certain hour, the other judge is at...
So you are defining 24 hours economy.
No, but nobody's going against it, but we just wanted to know by definition what it is.
No, but that is academic. You know 24-hour economy. That's all. 24/7, that's all.
Yeah.
All right, so there's also 68th Independence Day celebrations will cost only a tenth of 2024 amount. That's according to Kwache Ofosu as well. The last I recall, I mean, we've done, I think, 15, 17 million Ghana cedis. So if we are doing anything that will, yes, so I see here, because I hadn't read yet, Mr. Kwache Ofosu or Ofosu Kwache further disclosed that last year's event in Koforidua cost 15 million cedis, but this year's scaled down celebration will cost only a tenth of that amount, which would be about 1.5 million Ghana cedis, which I still think, well, we could do better on, but from 15 to 1.5 million
is a lot of savings.
Yes, but Oliver Twist, we can always do better. Even if we could do it at no cost, it would be good. But let me add this. A fellow, so Agenda 111 hospitals, previous government was disingenuous with figures, Dr. Asiedu says. A fellow at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, Dr. Kwame Sapong Asiedu, has raised concerns over inconsistencies in the financial figures surrounding the Agenda 111 hospital project. According to him, the numbers presented by both the current and former governments do not align, making it difficult to trust official reports. He says, it's important that we get to the bottom of this. The whole thing is funny. He's stressing that the original budget presented to the Parliamentary Select Committee was approximately 1.3 billion. However, he noted that the former presidential advisor on health under the Akufo-Addo administration, Dr. Anthony Nsiasari, had suggested that the amount required to complete the project exceeded the initial budget. Dr. Isiedu further questioned the figures presented in the handing over notes, which stated that the average cost of each hospital was $18 million. The final quote, if you go into the handing over notes, which all of them are referring to, they say the average cost of the property is $18 million US. If you multiply that by 111, you get 1,998. If you take out 400,000, it comes to 1.588. That is different from what Dr. Anthony Nsiasari is quoting himself. Meanwhile, he quotes $18 million US per hospital. So how am I to believe him? Amanda, I'll start with you. Quick thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think we should focus on the fact that from President Mahama's address, which I listened to just before we came back on air, not a single hospital is operational. And I think that's incredibly serious. So no matter what the handover team says academically about, you know, the figures have been massaged or whatever, if not a single hospital has been is operational, that is incredibly serious, especially if it is true to say that $400 million US has been dispersed on this, and, you know, on average, give or take, if it's 18 million, a bit less or a bit more per hospital, we could have at least seen at least 22 hospitals in operation. And perhaps this is another thing the oral policy will have to deal with in terms of recovery. But we just cannot do this to the lives of Ghanaians in terms of hospitals are actually there to save people. And if $400 million has been dispersed, and in one way or the other, it takes like 18 million to build a hospital, then, you know, at least 20 to 22 hospitals could have been built. And this is something that would probably have to be looked at a lot closely, whatever the handover team is saying.
Quick thoughts, quick thoughts.
Yes. For me, I believe that I'll go the political route. John Mahama spent 4 years in government, in his previous 4 years. In Central Region alone, he gave us 11 polyclinics. Central Region alone, and I'm not talking national. If you count national, you can count many of them. I am so scandalized that in 8 years of Akufo-Addo's administration, the only claim to fame, as far as hospitals are concerned, has been this Agenda 111. And yet, at the time of leaving office...
How about free SHS?
No, I'm saying health.
For the hospital.
So, you know, for hospitals.
Sure.
You know, at the time of leaving office, has not been able to have even just one hospital which is functional. That is not good.
Okay.
And that's something that is something that we have to interrogate, how it didn't happen. Remember how this Agenda 111 thing
please wrap on that
came.
for me.
It came as a result of the fact that John Mahama's legacy in 4 years kept coming up as far as hospitals were concerned. And we were just being bombarded with issues of facility when we were in this COVID-19 pandemic era. And then the government said, we are going to create, they started with 88, Agenda 88.
Indeed.
And they said they were going to complete it by December of that year. Then it increased to 111 because that made, in terms of soundbite, that made sense to them. And then they said they were going to complete this Agenda 111 within a year. And we said, no, you cannot complete this number of hospitals within 1 year. Now here we are. 111
I think time has
nothing
yes,
was done. And this is where we have to applaud John Dramani Mahama for being visionary, not being just, going with slogans.
Thanks for that point. I've heard people say that, I mean, even within the MPP, that we could have done 20 and completed them, operationalized them. And I've always said that that makes sense for me. If you put one and it's operational and it's serving a wide, look at Korle Bu. People come from the West African sub-region to Korle Bu.
Yes.
And the problems of Korle Bu, that's a topic for another.
Look at the University of Ghana Medical Center.
At the end of it, the international story on myjoyonline.com, it says China says it is ready for any kind of war with the United States. I'll quickly do just some headlines on the BBC Africa portal, and then it's a wrap. Opposition arrests spark fears over South Sudan peace deal. And then there's Nigeria's Senate president denies sexually harassing colleague. 9 things about Lesotho, the country nobody has heard of, and that's on the back of Trump. Lesotho, that African country, shocked by Trump's remarks that, quote, nobody has heard of the country.
And yet he's heard.
Donald John Trump, the same one who says Haitians are running around, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. I don't know what to do with Trump. Many feared dead in Sudan after shelling hits crowded market. I risked drowning to flee conscription by Congolese rebels, and UK will not pay Rwanda more for scrapped migrant deal. Well, this is how we're going to have to draw the curtains on the news review. 20 seconds, if you have any final thoughts. Amanda.
My final thoughts is, you know, on Independence Day, the aspiration of the people is what the Constitution said. And so I think the aspiration of the people, the government should focus on is a national mindset shift. You know, to just lead a cultural campaign to redefine patriotism,
right,
encouraging productivity, innovation, and discipline over political rivalry.
Thank you.
I would like to congratulate all of us for being 68 years old, and at least, unlike so many countries in the world that gain independence and plunge into war, Ghana is not at war. For that, we can celebrate. But we need to go beyond not having conflict to having clear path to development and seeing our people having hope that when you are born in Ghana, because you are born in Ghana, there's hope that you will survive. Because you are born in Ghana, there's hope that you will be able to gain good quality education. And because you are born in Ghana, you will be able to have jobs. So that is what I leave with our country, that all of us should celebrate that we are not at war. Congratulations to Ghana.
68 years old.
Thank you very much. And Amanda Akwoko Clinton is head of chambers at Clinton Consultancy. We also have James Kofi Annan. He's a human rights and environmental advocate. Both of them joined us for a conversation. Thank you for staying with us. We'll take a breather. We'll be right back. Do stay.
Thank you.